Hi, Caleb with Brownhouse here, and in today's video we're going to be covering the second part of our building an accurate AR15. So in this video we're going to be going over the lower receiver, and we're also going to be attaching other stuff like bipods and optics and whatnot. So for this one, it's going to be pretty straightforward as far as AR builds are concerned, because honestly there's not a whole lot you can do to the lower receiver to make your firearm more accurate, but there is something. So let's just jump right into it. Alright, the lower receiver I'm using is going to be one of my old Brownells lowers. This one I painted with Wolf Gray, Alumahide. So it's obviously it doesn't match the upper receiver, but it doesn't matter. We're probably going to paint the whole gun anyway, because when we're done we're going to look at it and we're going to be like, that's cool, and I'll spray paint it. So we're going to do that. Alright, now the reason I'm using this lower and not another lower, or there's some more Gucci stuff out there, but is going to be this set screw on the bottom. Now this screw acts as a tensioning screw that goes through the receiver and takes out any play between my upper and lower. I can lock it down, make it nice and solid. Now that doesn't, well, let me just back up here. As far as accuracy goes, you don't need that to make an accurate AR-15. As long as you're bearing down on the rifle to take out any play that may happen between your upper and lower right as you're pulling that trigger, then it's fine. But this just makes everything a little bit easier in that regard as far as shooting is concerned, and kind of gives us that peace of mind that we have that nice solid complete setup. And the same principle applies for the stock itself. If you have a really sloppy stock and you're shooting and there's a little bit of play right as you're squeezing that trigger, it could pull you off target a little bit. It doesn't technically make the gun less accurate as far as like mechanical accuracy goes, but it makes it harder to stay on target as you're pulling the trigger, if that makes sense, because you have play between your components. Alright, so now that we got that out of the way, let's just jump right into the build. I'll explain, what components I chose and why I chose them as we kind of go through it. So lower receiver, or actually let me bust out some tools, because we can't really do any of this without tools. Alright, so we're going to be working on a lower receiver. So we're going to be using a Midwest Industries lower receiver vice block. And I'll just go ahead and drop our lower on. Get these vice jaws out the way, we don't need them. And we'll tighten her on down. Alright, so first thing I like to install is that magazine catch, because it'll help us hold into our vice block, and if we install our bolt catch first, we got to get around it to install the magazine catch. So I always start with the magazine catch, and that's what I pretty much recommend everyone start with. Alright, so in this package here, I kind of packaged them together, but we have I believe this is a Noreen ambidextrous mag catch. And then we have a standard spring of unknown manufacturer. I just have a box full of these, so I know they're good springs. And the button itself, I'll put right here so you can see. That is the Forward Control Designs button, and it's dimpled because dimples are cuter. So that's what we're going to be using. Alright, let's jump right into the install. And I'll kind of take it off here. This may make it more difficult for me, but it'll make it easier for you to see. Alright, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my spring, drop it into the hole there, and from the opposite side, I'm just going to insert the mag catch. Alright, and as far as building this goes, we have a full AR build series that shows you probably better than what I'm showing you right now. But we're just going to take our button, push it on there. Alright. Turn clockwise because the button threads into the post on our actual lever. We're just going to turn that kind of as far as we can. And you can see that the post is recessed, so we're going to need to turn it further. Farther, tomato. Alright, I'm just going to use I have a handy dandy tool just for that. And I'm going to push it in like so. So now I can push it, it sticks out even further. I'm going to do I don't know, maybe 4 more turns and see what it looks like. That's a little bit too far. I should have did 3 more turns. Alright, so there it is, nice and flush. And now we can move on. Alright, so we'll set this back here. And we're going to install the bolt catch. So, let me grab my ball and hex wrenches here, because the Brownells lower does not use a roll pin. It uses a screw that goes through there, which is pretty convenient. That's not the right size. Alright. And we're just going to need to pull this out. And Aero Precision does this on some of theirs as well, and this is the same exact screw that they use. So if you wanted to modify yours to fit it, you could literally just buy those Aero Precision screws. Alright, what we're going to need. Let me get out my AR15 master parts kit here. And this is the kit I just keep all my spare parts in. We'll open that up. I'll grab the bolt catch plunger and the bolt catch spring. Alright. And I'll take both of these components together. You can see the spring just kind of fits on there. We'll stick it in the hole and try not to drop it when I do that. Now we're going to take a bolt catch. I have a handful of these. We'll use a Geissele Maritime here. That'll work just fine. I'm just going to insert that into the slots. Align. So I'm going to align the hole in the bolt catch with the hole in the receiver. And set it in there. And I'm just going to push it in. I'm trying to do this so you can see it, so I cannot see it at all. So I'm just kind of guessing. There we go. Thread it on in, and make it nice and snug. Alright, make sure it works, moves freely, that's good there. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and put in my my pivot pin. And this is my rear takedown pin here. So I'm just going to need a front pivot. And for these, I'm just using standard pins. Nothing fancy. Alright. And spring and detent. Alright, so we're just going to grab those. Alright. Alright, we'll insert that there. And I like to just do this real quick without the tool. If you don't know how to do this, go check out our other videos on it that go into more detail. But I'll show you kind of quick here. We'll just push it in, just like that. And work it in and out a few times just to kind of break that detent in with the actual pivot pin. You'll be able to feel it getting smoother as you do that. And of course you can put a little bit of oil on there too. I'm trying to keep oil off of it because that's just more stuff I got to degrease when I take it apart to paint it. So, alright. Now, let's move on. We'll go ahead and install our trigger guard. Now, I have not picked this part out yet, so I have no idea which one we're going to use. So let's take a look and see what we have here. There's an old spike, some old Seekins. Let's go with, you know what? Let's go crazy. Let's just stick with a standard one. Let's not lose our minds here. All right. All right. So for this, all we're gonna do, if you notice, one pin has a depressible detent. That is gonna go in the front of our receiver, like so. So I'm just going to set it here whilst depressing said detent, and that's going to lock in. Alright, so now the another cool feature of this Midwest Industries block is that it will support your lower receiver somehow. So if I can like learn how to read efficiently, the block says left side lower receiver. So you use the left side of lower receiver, not the right side like I was trying to. Reading is difficult. Okay, so now this will support it as we drive that pin in. And we'll just take our trigger guard roll pin. And, alright, now we'll take our roll pin punch as well. Which is in this toolbox somewhere. Alright. So I'll take a starter and a hammer, of course. Make sure the holes are aligned. And give it a few taps. And it's hinged loose on there, so it'll kind of want to move on you. That's okay. Make sure it's going into place. It is. And I'll drive it in as far as I can with the starter punch. Alright, and then just finish it off with a standard roll pin punch. Perfect. Alright. So at this point, now we have that installed, we can go ahead and install our trigger. So what trigger are we going to use? So you may not be asking this question if, you know, like you've seen any of my other recent builds, you know, I've been putting Geissele triggers in almost everything. And I don't plan on changing that for this. So we're using a Geissele SSA-E, and this one I actually took out of another gun to put in a the new Geissele lightning bow. So we're going to repurpose this one here. We'll put that back together. Okay. And Geissele triggers, when you get them, they come with this slave pin here already installed. So I'll just reinstall that to make everything a little bit easier. And wipe the grease off my hands because it's going to be slipping everywhere on the receiver. Then I'm going to take a sip of coffee. Alright, and now I'm going to take the trigger itself and just drop it in. And this is, also I didn't mention, this is the Super Trijicon trigger. So it's got that flatter shape to it here. Alright, and we'll take our pin and push the trigger down to align it. There we go, and I'll push my pin in. And that keeper pin came out the other side, and it is now on the floor. And that's where I'm going to keep it for now. Alright. Alright, so now we can install the hammer. Alright, so we just position our hammer spring, like so, right? And we are going to put these legs of this spring here on top of the pin we just installed, and push our hammer forward and down to line up with the hole. And I'm going to push the pin in from this side, just so I don't have to mess with that bolt catch at all. Alright, and there we go. Our trigger is installed. Now we just need to install our selector lever, or safety, whatever you want to call it. This one here's the Radian, and pretty cool how this one installs. I'll just grab a hex wrench here. Alright. and it uses a screw, and I'll show you how exactly it works. So you turn it tight, so righty-tighty, and the screw goes into the actual like body of the selector, and then you can dovetail the top of it off. So there's your screw down in there, dovetailed onto this piece, and if, as you can see, as I loosen it, it's going to back up and lock into the inside. There's a recess on the inside of that lever. So it's pretty cool how that works. Alright, so we're going to install this here. And yeah, I can go about it this way. So I'm just going to push it in, making sure, as you can see here, there's grooves cut for my safety detent, which is on the side of the gun that I'm on, so I want to make sure that it stays on that side. You will have to cock your hammer. Alright, slide that in. Then we just slide our lever back on. And then we turn it counterclockwise so that that screw butts up against the lever and locks it into place. And I'm going to make sure the other side's tight as well. Perfect. There we go. Alright, so at this point we need to, we can go ahead and install our grip. Okay, so the grip I'm using for this one, my personal favorite grip for AR platform right now, this is the Die-Free Company Kung Fu grip. Not only does it have cool packaging, but it's super ergonomic. Alright, this is a pretty gnarly grip. Also, I'm bringing back the word gnarly, and there's really nothing y'all can do about it. Alright, so here's the grip itself. We're going to need that safety detents and spring that we mentioned previously, which I'll just grab those out of my master parts kit here. Great, okay. So the spring itself, I'll put into the grip. Just let it float there. The selector itself, you know what? I said I wasn't going to put grease on anything, but it's just so much easier for this process. I'm going to put a little bit on the detent, and I'm going to use it as an adhesive, right? But it's also a lubricant. Okay, I'm going to stick it in the hole, drop it down in there. Same thing with the spring, but I'm going to put the greased end into the grip, so that now it doesn't fall out while I'm working, right? Okay, and then just push the grip up against the receiver here. And I'll close this grease before I dip my hand in it or something coffee related. I don't know, I'm just thinking of coffee related disasters I can cause here. Okay, I can use my hex wrench to install this screw, but I'm going to bust out the fix-it sticks. I'm going to move my coffee. Again, I don't want any coffee disasters. Okay, determine the size for said screw. 5/32 as always. My screwdriver bit. And I'm just gonna go right in there. And we're screwing it in. Nice and snug on that. Okay. Make sure my safety is nice and has nice good contact with that spring and detent. Also, I can go ahead and do like a quick function check of my fire controls. Great. Okay. Moving on. Set these aside. Alright, so now we're going to start installing the whole back end of this. Everything up front is done and good to go. We're going to be using a Law Tactical folding stock adapter for this. So I'm just going to go, I took this off of another gun, so I'm just going to go ahead and get it prepped for installation. Alright, let's see here. I'm going to have to undo something. So we'll just pull that lock spring assembly out of here. Alright, those parts come right out, and we'll need to open it, which is nice and snug. So what I'm going to do, actually, alright, so I'll just use that to support it, and then just pull it. There we go. Alright, and then we'll just unscrew that there, pull the hardware out. Okay, so now at this point, we'll just install our takedown pin with the groove facing the rear. I'll do it so you can see it here. Detents and spring. Okay. Now we will take our Law Tactical folding stock adapter, and if you notice here, there's this cut that goes into the back of your lower receiver. So we'll just need to push this flush against the back here, making sure we don't kink that spring. Let me rotate this. I want you to see how we have to be careful here. This is important. And we'll go straight in with it. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to take our locking piece here that threads into the back, and I'm going to thread it in. I'm going to get it started by hand. Alright, so once we have that kind of snug there, Law provides a tool. It's like a flat piece of steel that you can use, but we have their armor tool, which is a lot beefier, made to be reused a lot of times, obviously, and we're going to use that to tighten everything down. And it fits a standard AR wrench, so we can put that thing down. Nice and tight. Alright. Now another important step is going to be to tighten down the lock screw. So this lock screw on the side of the Law here, you got to use the right size wrench as well. Go figure, right? Okay, so this just needs to be slightly snug. You don't have to go crazy on it. This screw is contacting this lock ring we just installed to keep it from backing out under use. So there's that. Now, let me put my tools away here so that I'm not looking for them throughout the whole process. Alright. So now what I do is I'll just kind of close this here, and we'll reinstall that hardware that we took out before we started the installation process. So the latch piece, or the locking piece here, we'll drop that in. Spring goes in the hole, right? And then the piece that locks it all in just kind of sits up against there. Screw goes in the bottom. Tighten her down. Alright, so speaking of our accurate AR15, you know, we'll get to that adjustment process here soon. Some other good things to think about, you know, is the trigger pull. A lighter trigger you'll be able to shoot more accurately with, because you're not having to put as much stress on that trigger as you pull it, which could pull your gun off target slightly. So that's why we're using this trigger here. And the stock. The stock is always a really good factor. And we're using the Bravo company recoil mitigation system. And I know what you know, some of you may be thinking, you don't need to reduce recoil on the AR15. You're losing your mind. But it's really cool whenever you're shooting far with an AR15 to be able to watch your shots impact the target because your optic isn't moving because you're running on minimal recoil. So that's a big plus there. So I always recommend trying to reduce recoil as much as possible. Let's go ahead and install our receiver extension. To do that, we'll need a buffer retainer and spring. And I'll open this here. Alright, so buffer retainer spring, as always, like any other AR15 build, goes in there. Retainer goes over the top. And I say like any AR15 build. On any AR15 build, you put it in the lower receiver, but with the Law Tactical, that is moved back a little bit. Alright, so we're just going to push that down, thread in our receiver extension here to capture it. And if you can see, it's going to be just like that. Now, we'll just close her up. The end plate we're using is the Bravo company, and it has a QD attachment in it. It's nice and streamlined, that's why I really like using that one. The castle nut is a forward controls castle nut. And we'll just tighten that on down. So, typically, I would stake this castle nut. I recommend always staking your castle nut, but I'm not going to now because I'm going to take it all back apart to paint it. So, after I paint it, I will definitely be staking that castle nut. Alright, that's great. Good alignment there. Alright, so we're using a Sprinco rifle spring because the Bravo company recoil mitigation system is very similar to the Voltor A5, which uses a proprietary length of the tube and a proprietary buffer length, but they use a rifle spring. They also package these very well. Okay, let me get it out of there. We'll set that neatly over there. Buffer goes on the spring, and that goes into the tube. Just like so. Alright, now for the stock. We're going to be using the B5, their precision stock, which is great. It has super tactile and easy to use adjustment for cheek rise and length of pull, right? Nice and easy adjustments there. There's some QD attachments. There's some M-LOC on the bottom if we want to attach like a monopod or bag rider or whatever. Alright, so let me just close these here. So for this, all you need to do is pull down on the latch and slide it on the stock. Alright, it is adjustable. So we installed it by pulling that down. If we push this piece forward, that locks it so you can't pull it as far. So you can adjust it back and forth without it coming off. So I'm just going to put it as far forward as I can for now. Alright, so let's go ahead and start installing our accessories such as our Optic and our ARCA stuff. Alright, let's get to it. So let's go ahead and put the upper on the lower. Real quick, I'll just throw my charging handle in, which is a Radian Raptor. Take our bolt, insert that. Alright. Pull our pins here. Upper on lower. And I'll put my Law Tactical extension plug into the back of my bolt carrier group, because that's how that works. Close it. And there we go. Alright, so now we can start putting accessories on this thing. So what I'll do is flip this around. Just like that. Alright, now let's talk about optics first, and then we'll move on to the bipod. So for the optic mounts, we're going to be using the Trijicon Q-LOC, which, I mean, there's that word again. This thing's pretty gnarly, okay? Because the interesting thing about it, you have these bolts on the side that you can hand tighten, or you can put a socket wrench on them and tighten them down, you know, whatever. They have flats on them. You can use a crescent wrench, you know, whatever you have. But I know you're saying, like, that's everybody does that. Here's the crazy thing. When you put this on the actual rail, like if I were to mount this thing right here, without tightening it down, it will remain it'll retain zero like this, which is crazy, right? Because we all think like, okay, you gotta mount it on there, tighten everything down, torque it, you know, whatever. No, with the Q-LOC you don't have to do that. It'll retain zero just like this. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm not gonna tighten them down because I want to see where my scope sits. We are using, depending on when you're watching this video, this is a new Vortex Venom. This is their first focal plane, 3-15 by 44. And it's a 34mm tube on this one here. Let me pretend like I've done an unboxing before, and I'll turn it towards you when I open it. Alright, there we go. Look at that. And this does have the EBR-7C reticle in it. Pull that out. Nice and fancy. Alright, you got some destructions there with it. Let me make sure there's nothing else in here. Oh, look. But wait, there's more. Sunshade. Sunshade, lens cloth. Anything on this side? Yes, look at that. So it comes with a larger throw lever for making those adjustments a lot faster. So we'll definitely put this on there with it. And put the destructions back in there. Get some of this stuff out the way. Alright, cool. I actually haven't played with this optic yet, so I'm pretty excited about it. Alright, we'll get our sticker off here, because we are not going to mount it with this sticker on, but we are going to mount it right now. Alright, this is... I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to rip it. Ain't nobody got time for this, alright? Okay, so we're just going to determine where it sits on AR15 optics. Typically for me and my length of pull and everything, I like the back of the objective piece to line up pretty much right with the back of that charging handle. That's usually good for me. So let's see where that's going to fall here. I'm going to have to move this mount back a few notches. And I'm not using iron sights on here, so I'm probably just going to go back to about right there. Alright. I'm just going to hand tighten these things. I'm going to leave them there. We're going to see if that zero claim without having to tighten everything is true here. Alright, which I'm sure it is. I mean, it's Trijicon. Come on. Alright, so yeah, that's a good spot there. We'll put it right here. Alright. So I'm going to remove my screws on top. We'll refer back to our fix-it sticks. And just kind of work around the mess I've made so far. Alright. Yep, that's a T25 size. We'll pull all these screws out. Alright, set our optic in there. Alright, so I'm just going to kind of like breeze through the process of leveling and everything. We have dedicated videos on how to properly mount an optic and whatnot. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that here. We'll just breeze through that real quick. Alright, I'm going to get this thing mounted up here. So basically what I'm doing right now, I'm putting the caps on, or the scope ring tops on, trying to maintain an equal gap on each side. And I'm not putting them on super tight either. I'm going to loosen them so I can level my optic. And again, we did this as part of our bolt action build series. We went into like super detail on optic mounting. It obviously does apply to the AR15 as well, so check that one out. Alright, so we'll just actually push all this stuff forward, and I'm going to bust out the Real Avid Master Gun Workstation, just because it makes mounting optics super easy, and I love using it for that. And I'd be a fool not to use it if I have it. I almost put that in my coffee cup just now. You saw it. Alright. I'll throw this thing up here. Drop our firearm in. Let's see where I want to grab it. I think I'm going to grab it by that pistol grip. Yeah, there we go. Alright. Level my height. Then I'm going to level the cant here. And you can fine-tune that with the feet, which is awesome. Just trying to get the gun as level as I can. And yes, I trust this Geissele handguard enough to level off of it. Alright. And we'll just throw it on the receiver. Alright, looking good there. Just put it in a few different spots just to check it out here. Okay, so now I need to level the optic to the gun now that the gun's level. And I have another level here. And whenever I'm leveling off the optic, if I can, I like to use the bottom of the optic here because there's a flat there. And that flat is pretty much more, it's way more consistently level with the reticle than like your top cap or anything like that. So what I'll do is I'll take something I know to be straight and true, put it along that bottom edge, and then set my level on it. And in this case, if I can fit it, I can almost fit it. This may actually work here. Alright, so what we'll do here is torque everything down. Alright, I'm going to grab my torque attachment here, throw that in. Now I'll start on this one of the sides I loosened, tighten that down, and for this we'll call it 18 inch-pounds. Then we'll crisscross applesauce 18. And when I get one ring completely tightened down, I'll verify to make sure everything's still level. And it is. Then I'll do the other ring. Because now I know it's that front ring's going to hold it enough so that it's not going to move when I'm torquing the opposite ring. Okay, there we go. Optic is mounted, torqued down. And that's really all we need to do to it. And I mentioned before, let me get this gun workstation out of the way here. Put my levels back on so I don't lose them. Alright, so mounting this throw lever, put this back over here before I lose it. So these are pretty easy to install. All you need to do, there's a screw, right? All you need to do is loosen that screw. And to loosen that screw, you got to make sure you use the right size driver. Today is the day. Some days, I'm on fire. Absolutely on fire. I can guess the size. Today's not that day. Today it's taken us a few. You just loosen that screw. I'll actually just remove it here. You can see that's nice and flexible. So I'm going to go to the lowest power and swing this around just like so. Alright, so primarily I'm going to be shooting left-handed, right? So I need to consider that. So when I want to increase my magnification here on 3, I'm going to look at the range here and see how far this thing's going to move. Alright, so right there it's hitting the receiver, so I want to go to about there. That should pretty much be perfect. Now we just need to get this screw back in there. And it's kind of in an awkward spot where it is, so we'll just, making sure not to let it move. We'll run it back up so we can get to it. Make sure the actual piece is on there nice and even. And we tighten down this screw. And it's just a friction fit. Alright, so now when I'm in my shooting position, I can just reach up and just throw it all the way. Boom, there it is. Perfect. Alright, that's exciting. Now let's get a bipod on this thing. So, real quick, what I'm going to be using. This is a PRS bipod mount, or 17S mount. It doesn't have to be for a bipod. But I like it because I'm going to be using this bipod switch between different guns, especially AR15s, right? And it'll mount to an Arca rail using this wide base here, or if you want to throw it on a 1913 rail, the inside is also cut for that, so it's a dual purpose mount. You don't have to change anything. You can just pull it off one, screw it on the other. Alright, and again, like I said, shooting primarily left hand if I want to reach up and adjust my bipod for any reason. I'm going to put my adjustment on the right hand side, so I can do that with my right hand. And this, again, goes back to that same conversation. We're just going to tighten these down. Uses a 17S mount, which is a super versatile mount. Alright, so nice and tight there. All you got to do is loosen it. You can slide it on from the front with Arca, like so it'll fit anywhere on this bottom rail. Or if you want, you can just come in from the side. We'll put it about, that's good right there. And we'll just hand tighten that. So now, we have a bipod on the front. If we want to shoot off of a tripod, we can just stick that back here and we don't have to take anything off or move anything around. And that's all there is to it. So that is, well, actually, no, we forgot a step. You guys almost let me forget the most important step. Talking about the lower receiver, what makes an accurate lower receiver, we need to adjust that. Now, what I'm going to do, even though I installed everything, what I'm going to do here, and you can do this on any AR15 that has that screw. I'm just going to take that off. Take my vice jaws here. I'm going to find a way to hold this, so... Alright. For those of you wondering, I put this up here so that my scope is not touching the table, okay? Now, what we're going to do is take our... Go back to that 5/30 seconds, and underneath this grip, we'll just slide it off real quick here. Alright, so that screw I pointed out at the beginning, what we're going to need to do, make sure I have the right size here before I show you. Now if you take this screw and you start turning it, I think it's a 1/8. Alright, yeah, so it's nice and loose in there. So we're going to turn this screw until we feel it touch that upper receiver. Alright, I can feel it contacting the upper receiver right here, okay? Now if you go too tight on this, and you put some torque into it, you're not going to be able to get this thing apart because that rear takedown pin is not going anywhere, right? So we're going to put it just so it touches. Now we're going to just feel our play between our upper and lower. There's a little bit, so we're just going to go a little bit tighter, right? Perfect. Check our play, and nothing moves. Okay, so that is the key part of making a accurate AR15 in regards to the lower receiver. Alright, so we'll put our grip back on, nice and easy here. And there's some give and take here. So the pros to this is that you have a nice tight lockup between your upper and lower. So the cons, there's no way around it. It is going to be a little bit more difficult to remove that rear takedown pin. So gotta weigh the pros and the cons there. You will still be able to do it. It's just not as easy or not as fluid. All right, now that that's adjusted, no play at all between that upper and lower receiver, and yeah, it moves, but it's a little bit harder to push. Okay, and there you have it. So. Like I said, we're probably going to paint it, and now we just got to do some range testing. So next video on this thing is going to be shot at the range. It may or may not be painted by then, who knows, but yeah, so that's all there is to it. If you have any questions or comments, or particular parts you like to use, whatever, post them down below. I'd like to read them, I like to know what other people are doing. And if you're watching this on the website, there's no comment section, so you need any help, just give us a call on the tech line. We'll be happy to help you out. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.